welcome to this week's episode of Leadership Soundbites with Michelle and my guest, who I can thank Elaine Williams for connecting the two of us, Ron Reich. Ron is founder and trainer and CEO and everything else that you can imagine for RLB Training and Development. And 19 years, Ron, is that what you said?
Yeah. I've been
Which
in
is,
business for 19. I've been doing this kind of work for a little over 30.
yeah. So thank you. And I look forward to learning from you today as other people. So the topic that we're talking about, I'll kick us off with a quote, and it was around a question, Ron, that you ask people that are in the room, right? Of your three R's, what are the three R's?
The three R's are results, reputation, and relationships.
Thank you. So the question that you asked essentially after that is, which one is most important for sustaining business? Which is where the quote pulled up, and I have to emphatically agree with this. Because the quote is, business, after all, is nothing more than a bunch of human relationships. And so for me, if I'm sitting in the room with that quote top of mind, because I have to agree, I'm going to think that's got to be the linchpin that holds all that stuff together. So if I'm thinking about business, I don't know what business you would be in that you're not dealing with humans at some level. And then that that relationship is the thing that gets us to the sustainability, the fact that we're back again next year, that you're doing this for 19 years, whatever it may be. Um, Thoughts?
Michelle, there's not much I can add to what you just said, and I really, really mean that. I mean, with without relationships, where are we? I mean, truly, where are we? The only thing I would add to that, and in fact, I've been thinking about this, and and I think I want to start bringing this up more in the sessions that I do
Yeah.
moving forward. I believe strongly relationships are the most important art. Now that's fine. Research shows very, very clearly the better you know the people with whom you're working, the more effectively you will work with them. My point is, I think, and actually it's been my experience that I think a lot of leaders, a lot of people misunderstand what we mean by relationships. And I think a lot of times what they think about is, oh, well, I need to get to know Michelle personally. What are your hobbies, Michelle? What do you love to do? What are your dreams? And that's part of it, undoubtedly. Equally as important, though, within relationships, Michelle, what do you love to do at work? What are you passionate about? Michelle, what truly are your strengths? What do you do extremely well? Where do you struggle, Michelle? What are some of your limitations? What do you want to do with your career, Michelle? I mean,
Mhm.
all of that's all part of relationship building. It's not the only word that's popping into my head is fluff, and I don't mean it to be that way. There is so much more to it, though. And to your point, Michelle, I've got to say this. I was doing a session, I don't know, 6 weeks ago, whatever, it doesn't matter. And we were going through this question. One of the participants in the room was vice president for a construction company. And
Mhm.
he was adamant, just adamant. No, no, it's not about relationships. It's all about results. If I'm not screaming and yelling at people, nothing gets done. And
Wow.
I just said to him, I was like, okay, how much discretionary effort do you think you get from people? How willing do you think people are to come to you when there's a problem at the site? And if you're screaming at a delivery person for being late, how well do you think that's going to go over? Just all of these things. Go back to your quote. It's all about
Yeah.
a bunch of relationships.
So I'm curious what his response was, Ron, because I think there's plenty of people out there. I've heard similar sentiments from people that if I don't behave this way, nothing gets done.
It's interesting because over the years, and I'm proud of this, I have learned I don't need to be the subject matter expert with everything.
Right,
This was a class for the American Management Association, so there were
right.
people from other companies in the room. And I
There you
just
go.
asked them, I was like, folks, let me ask you, how important do you think relationships are and in any given industry? And all of them were like, oh my goodness, it's critical in any industry. And you see, and actually, Michelle, let's think about this. There's a connection there with relationships because I didn't need to put him in his place.
Yeah.
I don't remember his name. Let's just say Ralph. Ralph,
Yeah.
no, I'm sorry. I have a different perspective. This is my perspective. No, let's put it out there to some other people
Yeah.
and let them offer their opinions, building relationships with them as well.
Yeah. Well, and I think what to your point, right? Because we have plenty of leaders or other people that maybe they're the facilitator in the room. Because my brain takes me down the path. Had you stood up and challenged his thinking, right? Challenged him in the room, it would have put the walls up and excluded everyone else around you,
Exactly.
right? And it would have
Exactly.
just been something between you and him. And basically, we're going to stand off. But by, to your point, opening up to the room, the rest of the room was able to plant more seeds because he's probably going to chew on this stuff for a while.
That's right.
Okay. And it's going to create awareness for him as he starts having interactions because he's going to start wondering, could it be different?
Right. That's right. That's exactly right. And you know, part of relationships too, and this is such a critical point, is that I can't please everybody, and not everybody is going to buy into what I'm talking about in class or what we're covering in class. That's okay. I mean, it really is. I would love everybody. Ron, what a fabulous class. You know, we got so much out of it. Yes, we want you back and all this other stuff. That's not going to happen with everybody. It just won't. And again, that's okay because my job is to present the material as best as I know how, building the relationships with as many people as possible.
Mm-hmm. Um, I totally agree with what you're saying. There's a and I think it pulls in. You and I talked about another quote that you had that resonates with you, right? If you could share that quote, because I
Sure.
think it speaks to what you're talking about, because you are literally walking the talk
Yeah.
of what you're engaging leaders around engaging other people.
The quote that I love, it comes from John Wooden, the former basketball coach at UCLA. And he wrote in one of his books, a good demonstration is much better than a good explanation.
Yes.
And I love that because for me, that ties in the three R's right there. You know, we were chatting just a bit before the show. If I need to show you how to do something, I want to make sure as best as possible we have the relationship so that you're not going to be offended. You know,
Yeah.
it's like, Michelle, let me show you. You know, here's a, you know, you might want to think about asking a different question in that scenario. This is something you may want to ask, or you know what, next time, Michelle, maybe I'll do this module. And actually, you know what? Let me give you a real world example. I mentioned my friend and mentor to you briefly before. Rich was helping me to learn a 2 day leadership class. And I had gone through the material with him, and I had presented most of it in several different sessions. At the end of this one course, I still remember I said to him, Rich, I think everything went really, really well. The only thing where I struggle and the only thing where I'm uncomfortable is the change module. And I'll never forget, Michelle, because I was concerned. He looked
Yeah.
at me, he smiled. He goes, Ron, no big deal. I will model it for you one more time.
Yeah.
I will show it to you. I will demonstrate it for you one more time. Not explaining it. Let me show you one more time. He did it. Boom. Now I get it. I can do it. No issue. And we
Yeah.
had a relationship where I wasn't offended by that.
Right. Well, not only that, and I think the word that comes to mind for me, it's relationships, but it's also confidence, credibility, that there's trust, right? And I
Exactly.
guess they're not necessarily synonymous. I mean, you can have a relationship and it could be a sucky one.
Yes.
So the relationships you're talking about are good ones, right? Healthy
Yes.
relationships where
Yes.
there's trust. You were talking earlier because you had just gotten back from PT. See,
Yes.
there it is. There's that look.
Sorry for the groan.
You're fine. But I think it's appropriate and it fits into what you're talking about with relationships.
I had my knee replaced a little over 6 weeks ago, and I had a very intense physical therapy session this morning. I've quote unquote graduated to level two. The exercise, just the
Yeah.
exercises are getting more intense, the sessions are longer, the stretching is a little bit harder. The PT was stretching me today and she measured my extension. And she
Right.
said, Ron, you're at 105, which is remarkable. That's wonderful. I'd like to get it to 110. And then she smiled at me and she said, today. And I was like, I thought we were done. And my point is simply, we have the relationship where, like you said, she has credibility with me.
Mm-hmm.
I trust her. And I was like, you know what? Go ahead. Go ahead. Let's do it. She did. And the other thing that meant so much to me is that the woman who was stretching me today is the head of the facility. Okay.
Uh-huh.
One of the other individuals there, her name is Catherine. She's been stretching me most of the time in most of my sessions. And
Yeah.
I'm not trying to be a martyr here. This is no kidding around stuff. This
Oh,
hurts.
it's painful.
I'm on my stomach. She's stretching me, and I'm just like, oh, oh. Catherine came over. Ron, I'm right behind you. I'm right behind you. It's okay. I know it hurts. You're going to be fine. Keep breathing. Keep breathing. Relationship helping us to get to the results. She didn't
Yeah.
have to come over. She wasn't
Mm-mm.
working with me. There it is. There it is.
Yeah. No, and I have to wonder in that moment, what did you feel like? Because in my head, I've got this scenario playing out. When she came over, was that the thing that you needed to get you through it?
You know what popped into my head? And I swear this is true because it was a conscious thought. Wow, she really cares about me.
Mm-hmm.
She really wants the best for me. And that
Mm-hmm.
meant so much to me, just so much, instead of just the results. Ron, we're going to get you to 110 today. Here we go. And,
Yeah.
again, Catherine, being somewhere else, doing something else, he'll be all right, whatever. Don't worry about
Yeah.
him. I'm
Yeah.
not working with him today. No, we all help each other.
Well, and I have to wonder, we'll go back to the example that you did with the leader in the room, right? That it's, I have to yell at people or nothing gets done. And your question to them is how much discretionary effort do you think you actually get by that kind of a relationship, right? Because there is a relationship there. But
Yes,
what you're talking about is a healthy one, a good one, a caring one, right? But if that leader approached his team that way, you gave the extra effort, okay? And in that moment where you're like, okay, I'm all in, let's do this. Catherine's there by my side, we're doing it. You feel supported, right?
exactly.
If
Exactly.
leaders, I'm going to not say if, when leaders show up with that same thing, because I've had plenty of leaders on there, it's about connections, about relationships, about supporting your team, it's about meeting people where they're at, because it's all that stuff that you're talking about,
Yeah,
because we're all at different points. That extra oomph that you gave is because of that, where
that's
his people are most likely going to back off and give just to the point that they need to give,
right.
which, by the way, perpetuates the cycle of his behavior.
So that's exactly it. You people don't answer my questions, or you don't tell me what's going on. Of course I don't. I'm going to get my head ripped off. What possible motivation do
Yeah.
I have to share bad news with you? And
So I have to wonder, do you get a sense? I'm going to go back to the guy in the room, and maybe you did. Did something land with him to maybe think about a different approach?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I really don't. Except what I will add to that, he was the vice president, and he had his right hand person with him in the room as well. And
Okay.
a lot of the material landed with this other gentleman.
Okay.
And so, what I'm hoping is that the second in command can almost teach, quote unquote, or guide the VP
Yeah.
into a different behavior.
Yeah. Interesting. Interesting. Um, this topic interests me. I want, and so my question for you is, when we're going through this stuff, is there a tip or a trick beyond what you talked about where I let the rest of the room speak and I invite them into the conversation? With a leader that maybe is confronted with another leader that's behaving in the way this guy is, what are some thoughts you have around, like, I'm going to say peer-to-peer coaching, that kind of thing, to where you can kind of tap someone else on the shoulder? Any thoughts around that?
Yeah. Number one, if if you're behaving in a way in a meeting, Michelle, that concerns me, after the meeting, I may go to you. And again, I may. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, I'll go to you, because it's based on relationships.
Yeah.
And asking the question, and this is something I learned in a book that I read, an open ended question.
Mm-hmm.
Michelle, how open are you to some feedback from what just happened in the meeting? I'm open to it. Good. I would just like to talk to you about how I noticed that you interrupted people on several different occasions. This
Mm-hmm.
is what I saw. And, getting specific there.
Yeah.
And, just again, how open are you? Not, Michelle,
Yeah.
can I give you some feedback? The relationship just, I don't know. I'm not comfortable with that kind of question.
Yeah.
And I mean, another tip that I love, and people react very positively to this, is
Yeah.
something called the feedback loop,
Okay.
where if you come to me, okay, whether just assume we're peers, perhaps, okay, Ron, would you do me a favor? It's come to my attention, or I know that I tend to interrupt people during meetings, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm really trying to work on that. If we're in a meeting together and you notice that I'm doing that, here comes your feedback loop. Will you please tell me about it?
Mm-hmm.
Please tell me about it. So that you yourself are taking ownership of it and asking for the feedback. So
Mm-hmm.
it can be a two-way street. How open are you to feedback? Or you can even ask for it, and that's your feedback loop. And the
Mm-hmm.
relationships need to be in place on either one of those.
Yeah. It's interesting because so thank you for that. My brain went to a couple of things, and one of it is the rest of the story in that feedback loop. How and when do you want to hear about it? Right? Are you open real time to where we've got a word, you know,
Yeah, yeah,
or is it something wait until later that give me feedback after the meeting? So I think that's the rest of the story, right? And agreeing, what does that feedback look like on the timing
right,
and that sort of thing?
right.
Because not everybody is open to hearing real time
Yeah.
what that is, but I think clarity around that too matters. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely it does. I mean, I would never want to embarrass anybody
Yeah.
publicly.
No.
That
No.
that kind of thing. The conversation you and I just had would be
Yep.
done after the meeting and privately.
Yeah. Well, some people want to hear about it real time, right? There are leaders that want to say, "Hey, tap me on the shoulder." Say, "Hey, Ron," and that's my cue to go, "Oh God, I did
Yeah.
it again,"
Yes.
right?
Absolutely. The safe word, as it were,
Yeah.
the key
Yeah.
word. Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And a
Absolutely.
lot of it too is it's interesting when you talk about the feedback loop, leaders that are okay with being vulnerable and okay showing their teams that they're on a learning journey. Maybe they're announcing to people saying, "Hey, I'm working on this." So it's not just the buddy that's going to give you feedback, but it's your team. Say,
Yeah.
"Hey, this is the thing I'm working on. And so I'm looking at getting better." What you will also do is signal the team to start looking at that so that they can also give you credit when you do get better.
Exactly. Building the relationships.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I think there's a theme here. I think there's a theme. I really appreciate your time. Like, you have no idea. I love your approach to it. I mean, it's just I just love it. I love your approach to
Oh,
leadership development. I've been doing it for a while, not the while that you've been doing it. And so I appreciate the opportunity to learn from you, sir. So thank you.
oh,
Uh,
Michelle, my pleasure.
Yeah. So question, what one or two things would you like people to walk away with based on our conversation?
Relationships are the key to sustained business success. And one of the biggest roles any leader has is to be human. It's,
Oh,
it's to be human. It is to build relationships on all different types of levels, both personally and professionally. Do that, and I believe you'll succeed.
it's interesting. There's a word that's come up a few times in just discussions, comments, that sort of thing, and the word's humanness. And so I completely resonate with that, that I think we need to not have this preconceived idea about what things have to be, who we have to be when we step into the role. There's a term, executive presence,
Hmm.
that people throw around pretty, they just drop it like, oh, everyone knows what that means. And every time I hear it, I pick it back up and I said, so what does this mean to you?
Right.
Right? What are the behaviors? What are the attributes? How are you going to feel when you're in that place, when
Yeah,
you're exhibiting this thing?
that's right.
Because I think people are trying to step in to this mold, right? And not step into their humanness having executive presence. So yeah, no, I totally agree. Totally agree.
Yeah.
So, Ron, I appreciate your time. I wish the speediest recovery for you. I've
Oh,
had
thank
ACL
you.
surgery, which I can't imagine knee replacement. Okay. Because
I
ACL is
appreciate it. It's
painful
going
enough.
well.
Yeah, painful enough. So anyway, I appreciate your time. I appreciate the opportunity to learn from you. And hopefully it continues. And this has been Leadership Sound Bites. Please like, share, subscribe, do the little bell so you get notifications. Until next time. And Ron, have a great day. And
Thank you.
everybody
You
else,
too.
thank you.